hunting trip, and doctors fear the worst.
They're very, very worried about rabies.
And when the body arrives at the morgue, Dr. G and her staff's own lives could be in danger.
There is a huge worry about doing this autopsy.
Then, a son is riddled with guilt when his mother dies unexpectedly.
I felt like, what could I have done differently?
And Dr. G may be the only one who can give the family some semblance of peace.
I'm worried, am I gonna get a cause of death?
Altered lives, baffling medical mysteries, shocking revelations. These are the everyday cases of Dr. G, medical examiner. It's Wednesday, 6 p.m., and it's been a grueling day for the dedicated staff at the District 9 morgue.
That's it, I've had it for today, I'm tired.
At last, Dr. G is ready to head home, when suddenly...
Work, Dr. G. I get a call from a very anxious infectious disease doctor from one of the local hospitals.
The doctor informs her that one of his patients has just died mysteriously after being hospitalized for just a couple of days.
Unfortunately, he dies before they diagnosed what's wrong with him. What a tragedy. The family is besides themselves. How could this man, die so quickly? The sad part of the story is he's got a 20-year-old daughter who's very close to him. She watched her dad die in front of her eyes, so she's very anxious to find out what the answer is. So they asked me if I could take this case for public health because they're not sure why he died. Clearly, this case is a mystery. And I love these kind of cases where, the doctors are baffled, so in comes the autopsy. And hopefully I'll have an answer on what happened.
Ten days ago in Kissimmee, Florida, seemingly healthy 58-year-old Leroy Williams began complaining of severe headaches.
His wife is worried about him because he starts becoming confused, disoriented, memory loss, and she immediately takes him to the emergency room. They were frantically trying to help him, but unfortunately, he has a very rapid downhill course. He goes from having confusion, disorientation, and then coma, all in a very short period of time. Then they did an emergency MRI, and they found some swelling of the brain.
Doctors also ran a battery of blood tests on the 58-year-old.
As it turns out, all those tests were essentially normal. Now at this point, they're thinking, what's going on here? Maybe we need a better history. And they go back to the wife and say, what can you tell us about your husband? Why is this happening? The wife is saying about 10 days, 2 weeks ago, he had gotten back from a hunting trip with his brother in southern Georgia. They were sleeping in a tent for about a week, exposed to the bats and maybe even raccoons.
Based on this information, the doctors consider a new and alarming theory.
They're worried that he's got an encephalitis, some type of infection going on, and they're very, very worried about rabies. Rabies is a virus that you usually get from other animals. Wild animals have rabies, the bats and the foxes and the coyotes, the raccoons. In fact, that's where you're usually going to get it. The brother clearly states they were exposed to bats on this trip. You'd think that he would have at least told somebody that he was bit by a bat, but sometimes the bat bites are very innocuous and you're not even aware that you got bit. But another way that you can get rabies is aerosolization of bat guano, like bat poop. So we know there's a question whether you can get it by breathing it in. rabies, it gets into your brain. It's killing off cells. You get a lot of brain swelling, and you start getting these mental status changes.
If Leroy was infected and had gone to the hospital before he had any symptoms, he could have been treated with a vaccine.
But he died too quick. Once you start showing symptoms, it's pretty much uniformly fatal. And it's a relatively rapid death. Very scary. That said, rabies is incredibly rare in the United States. We have maybe 2 to 4 cases a year.
But as a precaution, Dr. G wastes no time in reaching out to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, just in case it is rabies.
It's important for public health to know how much rabies there is in the country, because if he's exposed to it, other people could be exposed to the same animal. Right. There is a huge worry about doing an autopsy on someone with rabies, because with any kind of aerosolized virus, you can breathe that in. This is definitely one we gotta be careful with. I don't want to expose anybody to anything that they don't feel comfortable helping me with. So we're definitely going to gown up from head to toe. We're going to wear the special N95 mask, and we're going to have a shield on. You ready? I am excited about this case because some of the stuff I have to do is out of the ordinary, and I want to do it fast. The CDC are really anxious for this answer. So there's a lot hanging on this autopsy.
Dr. G is under the gun to solve the strange case of Leroy Williams, an accountant who died suddenly after a recent camping trip.
He's had exposure to possibly rabid animals, both bats and raccoons, on this hunting trip of his up in South Georgia. The family is very worried what happened to him. And now I have the CDC on call because they're waiting for this tissue to be sent to help me diagnose it. That helps them with public health. I don't know if he has rabies. The doctors are very worried about that, but we'll keep our mind open and just see what happens. Okay, Brian. All right, let's see what's going on with this guy. Poor guy. He looks pretty good. I mean, they say he's 58, but he looks much younger. Good shape, muscular fellow. Open him up. I think we'll go ahead and do a complete autopsy. You never know what you're going to find internally. And oftentimes there's surprises.
Scalpel in hand, Dr. G opens Leroy's torso with the standard Y incision.
I look at his heart. The heart muscle looks pretty good. The valves look good. The aorta looks good.
No closer to an answer, Dr. G now moves on to the lungs.
Let's look at this. The lungs, kind of congested and heavy, but that's a very nonspecific finding. A little congested, but they're not that bad. They found some swelling of the brain, and oftentimes when the brain swells, the fluid starts building up also in the lungs. So until I get all my pieces of information back, I don't think I'm going to know what's going on here. Okay, let's see. Liver looks good. Spleen looks good. Kidneys look good. Looks fairly normal. Okay. Let's do the head. I'm thinking it's probably an infection of the brain. What type of infection? I'll keep an open mind. Maybe it's tuberculosis. There's a possibility even in encephalitis, meaning inflammation in the brain. There's so many weird things that could go on, but I'm gearing up for rabies.
As Dr. G gathers her tools, the atmosphere in the morgue is unusually tense.
You sure you want to do this?
Yep.
When they do that saw to get into the brain, cutting the bony top off the skull, the calvarium, oftentimes, if you're not skilled, you cut that brain tissue, and that's where the rabies virus lives.
If the brain is cut accidentally by an oscillating saw, it could make a gash and splatter tissue, causing the rabies virus to be released into the air, potentially infecting everyone in the room.
So we're definitely going to be very careful when we cut that bone, and we're going to try not to cut into the brain. A couple of my brain techs volunteered to help me.
Yeah, just take your time.
With a steady hand, morgue technician Brian Mahalski carefully opens the skull.
It's very difficult when the brain is swollen. He's got very little margin of error.
Technician Brian Mahalski has just begun to saw into Leroy's skull so Dr. G can examine his brain. One slip of his hand could be dangerous for the whole team.
There is that chance that we could aerosolize some rabies and breathe that in. Be careful. But he did a beautiful job. He never went into the brain.
Oh, nice job. Look at that.
I then very carefully remove the brain.
If Leroy does have rabies, the only indication visible to the naked eye will be swelling.
Oh yeah, look at that. His brain is swollen, but I knew that from the MRI. And that's very nonspecific. You could see swelling from anybody with lack of oxygen to the brain.
I don't see anything.
I was hoping maybe the meninges, that thin covering over the brain, would be cloudy. That would give me an idea that maybe it's an infection.
So far, nothing.
But I don't see any evidence of clouding or discoloration. The brain looked normal, except for that swelling. I don't see anything. I just didn't see any hints of anything unusual. At this point, I'm thinking it very well could be rabies, but we needed to look at the brain tissue.
I need some micros on this guy.
So while the tissue is fresh, I'll take certain sections of the brain.
A portion of the samples will be frozen and sent to the CDC, and the rest will be made into microscopic slides.
I'm really eager to get those slides back.
Take that one.
I have the CDC waiting for this tissue.
But the results won't come in immediately, and while the CDC is worried, it's even more agonizing for the family. Dr. G puts a rush on the micros, and the next day, the slides are ready for her to review.
I was excited. This is where the money's going to be, I hope.
Dr. G carefully places the first slide under the powerful lens and brings the image sharply into focus.
At this point, I'm thinking it must be rabies. And I'm excited because rabies is so rare. You don't get that very often in the morgue.
But when she peers through the eyepiece, she's completely taken aback.
I'm actually quite shocked. I'm expecting to see these little kind of pinkish kind of blobs inside the cells of the brain that indicate that it was rabies. But I don't see anything.
I do not see any evidence of rabies.
Nothing. The brain tissue looks great. So at this point, I'm frustrated. Well, like, oh, what a letdown. I now have no idea what's going on.
But then, in a slide from the meninges, the membrane overlying the brain, Dr. G spots something that stops her dead in her tracks.
That thin covering over the brain is just packed with little blue cells. I don't even know what those blue cells are. Where did they come from? What are they? I don't know. And these blue cells are everywhere, over the brain, not in the brain, over the brain. I'm like, what's going on here?
Based on the sheer number of these strange cells and their position outside of the brain, Dr. G suspects they must somehow play a role in Leroy's death.
They were everywhere. And they're crowding in there. So I think we have the cause of death. I just don't know what it is.
To solve this bizarre mystery, she enlists the help of neuropathologist Dr. Gary Pearl.
Hey, Dr. Pearl. I couldn't wait till Dr. Pearl looked at this. He's an expert on brains. That's what he does. He knows everything, but he really knows brains. But when Dr. Pearl looks at it, he can't tell what they are either. It's really a mystery at this point.
I ran a very extensive battery on this case because it was so unusual.
Finally, Dr. Pearl's findings reveal the hidden killer, and Dr. G is stunned.
I was really shocked when he told me what it was. And I've been doing this for, 20 years. This is even rarer than rabies.
Dr. G now knows that the answer to 58-year-old Leroy Williams' mysterious death lies in the special microscopic slides prepared by neuropathologist Dr. Gary Pearl.
Looking at the brain tissue is Dr. Pearl's specialty. And he has access to special stains that we do not.
The results are startling.
And I was really shocked when he told me what it was. Now that we have our answer, we can really put this together. It's a weird one, but we have our cause of death.
Two weeks before his untimely death, Leroy Williams, an accountant in Kissimmee, Florida, treats himself to a well-deserved vacation, his first in over 3 years.
He goes hunting with his brother out in a tent in rural southern Georgia where they're exposed to bats and they're exposed to raccoons.
But fortunately for Leroy, his glial cells become cancerous and multiply.
As with so many cancers, we don't know what triggers that cell on that period of time in this guy to become malignant. We just don't know. And this poor guy just had plain bad luck.
The cause of this cancer is not fully understood, but one thing is certain. As the malignant cells begin to multiply, it sets into motion a deadly chain of events.
These cancerous cells then start proliferating and crowding and irritating the brain, causing then the brain to swell, causing him to have the mental status changes. His state of confusion, his forgetfulness are all a result of these blue cells pushing in on and irritating his brain.
Sadly, his cancer, visible only under a microscope, is not detected by any of the hospital tests. And as Leroy's doctors struggle to figure out what's wrong and keep him alive, the swelling inside his brain reaches a critical point.
There's only so much space in there, and once the brain swells, that puts pressure on the breathing centers.
With his brain deprived of oxygen, Leroy quickly slips into a coma and eventually dies.
What a tragedy. It is a very nasty disease. Just like rabies, it's pretty much uniformly fatal. In this guy's case, his time was up, and there was nothing really medicine could have done for him. I immediately tell the CDC that this was a false alarm, this wasn't rabies.
Dr. G's findings help bring a sense of comfort to Leroy's loved ones.
I know it doesn't bring them back, But somehow knowing at least why they died helps them cope. I have to say, it was interesting to learn a new disease. The beauty of this job is you will never see it all. The day you say you've seen it all, you ought to leave, because you always have to keep learning, and you shouldn't be ashamed of that. I mean, that's what makes us grow, and that's what makes life interesting.
It's New Year's Day in Orlando, Florida, but Dr. G doesn't have the day off.
We do autopsies 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And so a doctor has to be in the morgue on every holiday. And this year, I pulled New Year's. It's never where you want to be on the holiday. I walk in, and there's about 6 bodies of people who died New Year's Eve. Of course, alcohol is involved on New Year's Eve. I've had car accidents, drunk driving, and of course, partying. People like to use drugs, and so I've had a lot of overdoses.
But Dr. G notices that one of the 6 bodies doesn't fit the profile of a New Year's partier.
This woman in particular was sad. She just looked like a sweet grandmotherly type. We need to figure out why she died on New Year's.
Dr. G learns that Virginia Lowry was in Orlando on vacation with her son Dennis and her grandson Nathan.
It was a nice break from the winter of Michigan. We went to Florida for the warm weather and sunshine, and she loved it down there.
After a day of sightseeing, Virginia and her family sit down for dinner at a seafood restaurant.
It was just basically a perfect dinner, perfect vacation so far. And then, she started complaining about something in her throat.
I gave her water, and I thought it would probably work its way out because catfish bones aren't too treacherous that I know of.
The water seems to help, and the family finishes dinner and returns to the hotel.
We were relaxing in, getting ready for bed, and gonna watch the ball drop for New Year's Eve, and me and Nathan was screwing around out in the hall. Actually, I think we were running down the hallway at full speed to see who was faster.
But then Dennis hears something coming from his mother's room.
She was making like a coughing, choking sound.
And it sounded like she wasn't breathing in, like gasping for air or something. And he started trying to get, shake her, and then started doing like CPR.
The paramedics came. They tried to resuscitate her for several minutes and took her to the hospital. I sat in the waiting room till the doctor came out. It seemed like hours, and the doctor come out and told me that she had passed away. Well, I was devastated. I didn't know what to do.
It was definitely one of the most devastating things I've ever heard, because she's been there for me and my whole family my entire life.
I mean, I lost the most important person in my life. Someone who had been there for me for anything, good and bad.
What's more, Dennis and Nathan's grief is compounded by guilt.
I felt like, what could I have done differently? If she had choked on a bone or whatever, I could be partially responsible because I didn't take her to see a doctor. Kind of felt like it was my fault.
Now they're hoping It's New Year's Day at the District 9 morgue in Orlando. Dr. G is reviewing the case of 72-year-old Virginia Lowery, who died suddenly last night.
It was sad because she was here with her grandchild and her son, and they were really enjoying the time together.
According to the investigators' report, the family believes Virginia might have choked to death.
She had fish for dinner, and at the hotel, she started coughing. So the son feels like she's choking on some of the fish bones. But I don't understand how the fish bones are connected to, multiple hours after she ate. Honestly, truly, I didn't think she was choking on fish bones. It didn't make sense. So I really didn't know what I was going to find with her. But you have to keep an open mind when you do an autopsy. I have to find out what the facts are.
In the meantime, Dr. G looks deeper into Virginia's medical history for other clues.
Good, how are you? We know she got here from Michigan. That's a long trip. That really made me think possibly a pulmonary embolus. One of the risk factors for emboli is immobility, being cramped in one place for one long period of time. You are much more prone to get blood clots in your leg that then break off and go to your lung. And if they're massive, it causes sudden death.
But Dr. G then sees other red flags in Virginia's medical history.
Oh my God. We know she's obese, and we know that she's got high blood pressure, she's got high cholesterol. Unfortunately, she does have type 2 diabetes, and that's going to put her at risk for other diseases. You're very much at risk for strokes, heart attacks, kidney disease.
And according to the records, she's already had a stroke. And this, along with her high blood pressure, could have been a deadly combination.
A hypertensive stroke could kill you very fast if it's in the right location. So that is a possibility. We find out she's on medication to lower her blood pressure. It seemed to be pretty well under control with the medications her doctor was giving her. It didn't make sense. So I really didn't know what I was going to find with her. We'll see. I'm anxious to see what the external has. Okay, how's it going over here? Hoping whatever was in her airway causing the choke would still be there. I don't see anything coming up. I certainly don't see anything that obstructed her oral airway in her mouth.
Though Dr. G is fairly confident that Virginia didn't choke on a fishbone, she won't know for sure until she completes the full autopsy.
I need to look on the inside. We know she's had a stroke before. We know she has high blood pressure. So I think what we'll do first is go ahead to the cranium.
Dr. G's morgue tech, Tom Hemphill, reflects Virginia's scalp and opens the skull, revealing the brain.
The first thing you do is look at it before you take it out, see if there's any hemorrhage over it, any swelling, edema. That can kind of give you a hint if anything's going on the inside. There really wasn't any of that.
Then Dr. G lifts the brain from the skull. It's not long before she does spot evidence of a past stroke.
You see the loss of tissue. You just see kind of a little cavity of where brain tissue would have been. It's died and gone away. Yeah, previous one.
However, Dr. G finds no evidence of any new strokes and rules this out as the cause of death.
I'm going to turn my attention now to the rest of her body because I really don't think the answer's in the brain. All right, so let's see. So we'll do the Y incision and extend that into the abdomen. Oh my God, look at this. A lot of fat surrounding her organs. That's bad. That's what's associated with type 2 diabetes.
Dr. G knows that diabetes can cause damage to the abdominal organs. She starts with the liver.
I look at the liver. It's very congested, a little fatty, probably from her obesity. I look at her spleen, and I look and move the bowels around to see if there's any hemorrhage behind all those bowels. She didn't have any of that.
Okay, so
Nothing. Her kidneys, though, not so good. Her kidneys show very devastating effects from the high blood pressure and from the diabetes. But you don't necessarily die that suddenly from that. So I'm not finding anything that really tells me what's going on. But we still have a few things to look at. And the one important thing, which is high on my list, is those lungs, because this could be a pulmonary embolus. Blood clots develop in your vessels in your leg that can break free and get into your lungs. I really think that, that would have fit some of her symptoms. She was coughing a lot right before she went down suddenly.
let me take out her lung, Sammy.
Dr. G removes and weighs each lung, then examines them carefully. But after a thorough inspection, she comes up empty-handed again.
We can't find anything wrong with her.
They're just very congested like we normally see with somebody who's resuscitated. But her lungs do not show any pulmonary emboli.
No pulmonary embolus.
It's just hard. I can't really figure out what's going on. Hopefully I'll have the answer by the end of the autopsy because her family would like to know what happened.
Dr. G is performing the autopsy of 72-year-old Virginia Lowery and hoping to find an answer for her grieving family.
I really needed to know what happened and how it happened.
I wanted to know exactly why she died, so I just wanted closure.
Now, with pulmonary embolism and stroke off the table, Dr. G has one more organ left to examine, and that's the heart.
It's important to look at the heart, particularly in this case. We know she's diabetic, and we know that she's got high blood pressure, which increases your chance of atherosclerotic plaque in your heart. Certainly, coronary artery disease could be a reason why somebody would die suddenly and unexpectedly.
All right, let's get this off.
Dr. G's first glimpse of the heart confirms her suspicion that there is something wrong there.
There's clearly a lot of fat on the outside of her pericardial sac, which you don't see very often except when really obese people.
Since Virginia was obese, this isn't a surprise. But what she finds next is...
As soon as I open up her heart sac, there's a problem.
Oh boy.
The thin membrane that surrounds the heart, the pericardial sac, is filled with blood. She slices it open and ladles out 12 ounces, enough to fill a whole soda can.
We got a lot of blood.
She clearly has a heart sac or pericardial sac filled with blood pressing on her heart. When that happens, her heart can't pump, it can't expand to get blood in it. So there's forces on the outside of the heart keeping it from expanding. So you go down very quickly. That's a cardiac tamponade. Those are incompatible with life. And there's nothing else that's going to trump that. I had my cause of death, but I don't know why. So I have to look very carefully to see if I can find where that blood is coming from.
Dr. G removes the heart and weighs it.
And her heart looks like it's pretty good shape. It's only about 350 grams. That's not so bad. We see hearts from high blood pressure, 600, 700 grams.
Baffled, Dr. G holds the heart in her hands and explores it inch by inch.
I'm moving it around, and then I see it.
Ooh, what's that?
It's about a 1/2 inch tear through the muscle causing the blood to come out the left ventricle and into the pericardial sac. She literally has a hole in her heart. Why does she have a hole?
Dr. G dissects the vessels of the heart to find out what caused the hole.
As I cut that coronary artery about 5 millimeters, there it is. Blood clot that's totally plugged up the artery so no blood can get there. And then that heart muscle doesn't have oxygen going to it and it starts to die. And because there's constant stress on that dying, softened part of the heart, it eventually gives out and tears a hole right through it. Now, I see why she died.
But there is one thing that puzzles Dr. G.
I can't tie this one up with a little bow for you. I don't know.
We know she's on medication to lower her blood pressure. She's on 2 oral medications for type 2 diabetes. She's on a medication to lower her cholesterol, and she's also on blood thinners.
Virginia's combined medications should have helped prevent this from happening. Why didn't they work?
Something is not quite right.
Hoping to shed some light on this final mystery, she decides to make a call to Virginia's son, Dennis. What she learns finally helps her piece the puzzle together.
Oh my God.
This story actually begins years ago because of her putting on weight, causing type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure. Plaques start building up inside of her coronary arteries, and that decreases the space for the blood to go.
Her doctors prescribe medication to control her cholesterol and blood pressure. But Dennis reveals to Dr. G startling new information about the medication.
I kind of was cleaning up her room and opened up one of her dresser drawers and it was just full of pills.
The heart is being suffocated by its own blood. It compresses the heart so it can't beat.
With her heart unable to beat, Virginia dies. Dr. G is finally able to give her family the answers they've been waiting for.
I don't know why she said she was choking on fish bones, but I do know why she died.
For Dennis, knowing the truth is a double-edged sword.
It was kind of relief, but in another way, it kind of made me wonder if I had monitored her medicine better, if she would have lived longer.
To Dr. G, the lesson is that Virginia wasn't killed by any one thing, but by a lifetime of unhealthy choices.
This is a sad case. This is a Western civilization kind of death. You know, clearly our Western diet, our junk food, our refined carbohydrates, they aren't good for us. And this is what's going to happen.
I miss everything about her. I mean, she was my best friend, person I could talk to about anything. There when I needed her. If I could say one last thing to her, I'd say, Mom, I love you and I miss you.
We'll get into your true crime episode in just a moment. When this one is finished though, make sure your next listen comes from the Always True Crime Network. This show is a part of it, and so is Drunk Women Solving Crime. Every week, comedians Hannah George and Taylor Glenn are joined by a famous face to put their drunk detective skills to the test. The recent episode with Selena Morzinski, also known as Charity Shop Sue, is a must-listen, featuring a story involving riot police, a chimney, and an unexpected ending. And there's more alternative true crime from Strangely as well. Poppy Damon and Luke Jones bring together some of the weirdest true stories from around the world. If you haven't heard about the post-work fishing trip that took an extraterrestrial turn, that should definitely be your next listen. Search for Always True Crime to find these shows and more.
Why would a serial killer confess to a sadistic spate of brutal murders? Find out on Murder Mile. Today, I'm standing on Prince of Wales Drive in Battersea, SW1. 3 streets east of Peter Bryan's failed suicide bid having killed Nisha Sheth. 2 streets south of the first of the infamous taxi driver murders. And 2 streets west of the lost fingers of the tortured artist. Coming soon to Murder Mile. Prince of Wales Drive is a very exclusive part of town. Consisting of 5- and 6-story, red and white brick mansion blocks stretching the full length of the road. These multi-million-pound serviced apartments have stunning views overlooking Battersea Park and the River Thames, being strictly for those with money. Accessed by a secure communal door. His first victim was an elderly widow by the name of Barbara Ann Pinder. Born on the 17th of July 1908, Barbara Ann Wilson, as she once was raised in the comfortable and calm splendour of the seaside parish of Selsey in Sussex, a place whose name means Holy Island. With her father being the town's rector, they lived in the rectory with her mother and 2 siblings, Helen and Wilfred. And being middle class, they were educated at private schools, and they had everything they wanted catered for by a nurse, a maid and 2 servants. In 1921, with her father being the rector of nearby Cuckfield, the family moved into the vicarage, and it was here that Barbara met her husband. Walter Archibald Pinder was born in Bishop Stortford and raised with all the benefits that money can buy. In June 1929, as a couple in their early 20s, they married at Cuckfield and had a son called Simon. By 1935, they were living in the poshest parts of West London, being Kensington and Chelsea. And for many years, her sister Helen lived with them at Rectory Chambers. With Walter being an aeronautical engineer, he was often busy, especially as the Second World War loomed large. But again, having 2 servants and a governess, this gave Barbara the rare chance, unlike many women of that era, to pursue a career. For many years, Barbara was an aeronautical journalist and the former editor of Flight magazine. But her true passion was music. In her youth, she'd been the main understudy of the principal players for Ivor Novello, one of Britain's most popular entertainers in the first half of the 20th century. And as a professional pianist, she was instrumental in the hit West End play Perchance to Dream, which played at London's Hippodrome from 1945 to 48. And as a heartfelt thank you, Ivor Novello signed and gave her the original transcript of the show's biggest hit, We'll Gather Lilacs, which was something she always cherished. On the 20th of March 1980, Walter died. And although this loss of a husband of 41 years could have broken her, described as a widow of great charm and distinction who seemed young for her years, she kept herself busy as a writer and an artist. She was active in the church and liked a good long walk. By 1984, living alone, Barbara moved into the small, self-contained flat on the 3rd floor of Prince of Wales Mansions in Battersea. It was safe and secure as many of the occupants were elderly and well off, and even though she was a petite 76-year-old lady who was immaculately dressed and always had neatly coiffured hair, said to be young at heart, she had the drive and stamina to last beyond her 100th birthday. The day before had been unremarkable. She'd received no odd phone calls or visitors. She wasn't worried, and the only difference to every resident's day was the workmen who trudged about the flats due to a recent fire which had led to the partial collapse of the roof, hence the communal door was left open. No one knows exactly what time she was attacked on the morning of Saturday the 27th of October 1984. but as an early bird and a creature of habit, she had failed to pick up a newspaper from the shop. With no witnesses, only evidence can paint a picture of what happened to Barbara Pinder. It's unlikely that she knew her attacker. As being a private person, her door was rarely open to others. With no sign of any break-in, either he knocked, possibly posing as one of the many builders on site, but with her son Simon noting,
"She was wearing her walking shoes. She always took them off when she got home,"
leaving them on the mat by the door. Therefore, it was more likely that someone had followed her in. Behind a locked door, although she was only tiny, with every ounce of her strength, she put up a brave fight to get this stranger out of her home. As with the furniture knocked and crockery smashed, as she was tossed about like a rag doll. As Detective Superintendent Kemp later stated,
"She didn't stand a chance."
Towering over her attacker was large and powerfully built. As bruises proved that with one hand he strangled her, squeezing her windpipe and fracturing the bones in her throat. As with the other, he beat her about the face and the skull with a hard, undetermined blunt object, breaking her jaw, her teeth, fracturing her cheekbone. And although she was barely conscious, his attack was far from finished. As she lay, slumped and broken on the carpet, he repeatedly kicked her in the head as if she was a ball, which caused cuts, bruises, bleeding and brain damage. But this wasn't the end. With her own knitting needle, he stabbed her in the neck to torture her, and left it embedded in a psychotic level of sadism which detectives later felt was a trademark of his killings. But even that wasn't the end. As with a knife, believed to be a 6-inch stiletto blade, he frenziedly stabbed her 45 times in the chest with a level of ferocity. The pathologist stated,
"Most of her vital organs were in shreds."
As he'd stabbed her in the heart, liver and stomach, as well as severing her breastbone and several ribs. The murder of 76-year-old widow Barbara Pinder was a massacre. And yet, it had no obvious motive. A stranger attack on a wealthy woman where nothing was stolen. Her handbag lay open, £30 was left untouched, as were her antiques, pieces of jewellery, and the valuable manuscript by Ivor Novello. She was viciously attacked, but she hadn't been sexually assaulted, and it's unlikely she knew her attacker. The next day, Simon, Barbara's son, rang as he always did. Getting no reply, he drove from Avon, found the door locked, and with the police breaking it down, inside they found a mutilated body. Recalling the horror, Simon said of the scene,
"He must have been a madman."
With her brutal murder reported in detail in local and some of the national papers, the barbarism of her injuries sickened and shocked the community. Many demanded the reintroduction of the death penalty, and lead detective D.S. John Kemp stated,
"This is one of the most savage and senseless killings I have ever come across."
But it would prove impossible to solve without a single witness to her murder. Fingerprints were found at the scene, but they didn't match any known felon. The police hadn't a single suspect, and having taken 390 statements and interviewed 75 people, they were no clearer to a name or a motive.
As it seems likely that someone had come here to kill, not to steal or assault.
A service took place for Barbara at Chelsea Old Church on the 6th of December 1984. At the inquest, almost a year later, Coroner Dr. Paul Nabman asked D.S. Kemp,
"Is an arrest imminent?"
but he had to admit,
"Not in the immediate future."
Detectives warned pensioners living alone in Battersea to take all precautions and not to let any strangers into their homes, as they were sure he would attack again. And almost exactly a year later, he did. Little is known about her early life, even her birth name or her hometown. But 86-year-old widow Henrietta Osborne, known as Peggy, was the epitome of this particular attacker's perfect victim. Like Barbara, she was small, but being frail, partially blind, and almost totally deaf. She was housebound. She had few visitors beyond a social worker, and spent many hours a day in the armchair, sat beside the fire, listening to her music, which was always played too loud. And again, that meant there were no witnesses. Again, as with Barbara, she received no strange visitors or calls that day. She wasn't worried, and living in Lumley Flats, part of the Ebury estate on Passmore Street in Chelsea, just 1 mile north of Barbara's home. Inside, she felt safe and secure inside a tastefully decorated, modestly wealthy flat, surrounded by others. Henrietta was quiet, unassuming and private, just a frail old lady whiling away her final years alive. Again, no one knows exactly when she was attacked on Saturday the 27th of October 1985, as the last time she was seen alive was at noon on her doorstep as she collected her milk, bread and papers. With no signs of a break-in, it's likely her door was accidentally left unlocked, hence why it was chosen. We also know she didn't let anyone in, as being deaf, she never heard the doorbell, and by then she was already in bed. Neighbours later stated that they heard a bang at around 2 a.m, but thought nothing of it. The room was slightly ransacked, with a few pound notes scattered on the floor and ornaments and furniture knocked over, possibly as the attacker fled. But burglary seemed uncertain, as roughly £1,000 in cash, £4,000 today was found in the flat, untouched. And yet a 10-inch Japanese earthenware vase from the 1920s was stolen, and even though it was rare, it was only worth about £50. But maybe the killer didn't know that. What seemed strange was that the burglary of her sitting room was brief and chaotic. Yet he spent an inordinate amount of time in her bedroom, torturing Henrietta. Out of sadism, hatred, or maybe both. As before, with one hand he strangled her. As with the other, possibly using his fist, he kept battering this helpless and disabled old lady until her face was bruised, bloody, and a swollen pulp. Again, with her slumped to the ground and barely conscious, he repeatedly kicked her and even stamped on her to the point where one of the vertebrae of her spine had cracked. But still, he wasn't finished with her. As he had with Barbara using a knitting needle, in a sadistic detail deliberately left out of the press to trap the killer. Into her neck, he'd stabbed a ballpoint pen and left it embedded within. Then, to terrorize and cause her immense pain, either a thin knife or a chopstick had been rammed between her eyelid and her eyeball, perhaps to make her tell him where her money was, or maybe just for fun. For minutes or possibly hours, she endured a prolonged excruciating agony and terror, never knowing if he would let her live. But even that wasn't the end. On her bed, he vaginally raped this 86-year-old widow, then turned her over and anally raped her. And with her still face down and bleeding, he repeatedly stabbed her through both lungs so she couldn't breathe or scream, and set fire to the bed. Her murder was yet another massacre of a frail old lady by a maniac, who vanished without a trace. At 8 a.m. the next morning, a neighbour noticed smoke coming from the ventilator grill above the front door of Henrietta's flat. The caretaker called the fire brigade, and in the bedroom, her body was found. Still smouldering after several hours, the lower half of her body, her legs, anus and genitals, were destroyed by the fire, taking with it much of the evidence. But with multiple stab wounds to her chest, and at least 2 of the weapons used to torture her still embedded in her neck and face, detectives were called in. As before, the most sensational details of the case were reported by the press. Some were deliberately left out, those only the killer would know. And with this being potentially linked by detectives to the murder of Barbara Pinder, tabloid newspapers had already dubbed him the Saturday Night Slaughterer. This investigation was headed up by Detective Chief Superintendent Bill Carney. But as before, it looked unlikely to be solved. As the murder weapon, a 6-inch knife, was missing. No one was seen entering or leaving her flat. A set of fingerprints were found, but never connected to a known felon. And even though a nationwide murder hunt was launched and the case garnered mainstream coverage, DCS Carney stated,
"We're taking it very seriously. The possibility that they could all be connected."
As in the intervening weeks, 4 other women had been attacked on neighbouring streets. Several elderly women on the Lillington Gardens estate had been beaten, stabbed and robbed, with random outbreaks of arson at several homes of lone women across the previous year. On the Saturday before Henrietta's killing, an unnamed female pensioner was attacked on her doorstep by a stockily built man in his 30s who asked to be let in to watch the television. She escaped with just bruises. Yet on Tuesday the 30th of July 1985, on Warwick Way in Pimlico, Eileen McCarthy, a 60-year-old cleaner, was approached by a man, aged 35 to 40, 5'10", straight black hair, stockily built, round face, wearing a white sleeveless denim jacket, a light blue shirt and a dark coat, and at 5:45 p.m. near the junction of Belgrave Road, with no premeditation and having never seen him before. In a swift and frenzied attack, he stabbed her 3 times in the face. Not slashing, not cutting, but stabbing her with such ferocity, detectives described it
as plunging the knife in and literally ripping it apart until it broke the back of her skull.
She screamed. He fled, and taken to hospital, she made a slow but good recovery. At Westminster Coroner's Court, Dr. Paul Knapman declared that Henrietta's murder
was particularly macabre. No motive is apparent, and it is more disturbing that no one was caught or convicted of this crime. It would have been far more preferable if it had not had an inquest, but a murder trial instead.
And as the case stalled, the killings of Henrietta Osborne and Barbara Pinder remained unsolved. Until a killer who wanted to be caught confessed. But why? One year after Henrietta's murder, on the 30th of June 1986, police in Pimlico arrested a man who'd broken into the flats of 2 elderly neighbours on nearby Page Street, and for no reason set fire to their beds as they slept in them. 32-year-old David Mackenzie had lived in London for years, but was born in 1954 in the Scottish city of Inverness and raised in Dundee. Described as stocky and powerfully built, Mackenzie's education was limited, as being diagnosed age 6 with a non-specific personality disorder. Since 1976, he'd been asking doctors,
"I want to be somewhere not in the community, in a prison or a hospital."
As with no control over his actions, he told one psychiatrist about his sexual deviancy and his hatred of women. In his teens and 20s, he'd worked in hotels and as a hospital porter. But unemployed at the time of his arrest, he was known as a prolific, if unskilled and unremarkable burglar. For the last few years, Mackenzie had lived at Duke's House, a council-run tenement block on Vincent Road in Pimlico, in the shadow of Big Ben, and right at the back of the houses where he'd set fire to 2 old ladies in their beds. He wasn't a suspect in either of the killings, but being mentally unwell, his arrest resulted in him being put on a hospital order. So instead of serving time in prison, he was held at a psychiatric hospital as he was deemed a danger to the public. As on the 26th of June 1986, just 3 months before Henrietta's killing, in his flat, this self-confessed paedophile indecently assaulted, raped and buggered a 14-year-old girl. Charged with rape, when later questioned about the fires, on the 16th of August 1986, Mackenzie spent hours saying nothing, not even replying no comment to the detective's questions, as the balding 17-stole hulk just sat there, staring. But it was as he was asked, possibly jokingly,
Do you have anything else to say in your defense?
that overpowered with the weight of guilt, he made a startling confession.
I want to tell you about the old lady.
And unaided, this blabbermouth confessed to Barbara Pinder's murder, and according to the detectives,
He revealed details only the killer could have known.
on the 29th of August 1986, David Mackenzie was charged at Horse Ferry Road Magistrates Court. And while held on remand, again to the detectives he said,
I want to tell you about the other old lady.
He confessed to the killing of Henrietta Osborne, and on the 14th of November 1986, he was charged. A killer was caught. 2 murders were solved. The elderly women of Battersea and Pimlico were safe from a monster. And even though he never said why he did it, it concluded because he felt shamed. In his interviews with detectives, finally talking, the blabbermouth was open and frank about his heinous crimes, which he recounted unemotionally as if he was reading a set of instructions. Yet his head hung low in shame and his eyes were etched in guilt. When asked, he couldn't give any motive. And although his recollection was accurate and proved that he was there, he had some glaring errors in his memory, maybe caused by drink or drugs, fear or shame, or his limited mental capacity. But the paedophile, sadist and double killer David Mackenzie wouldn't immediately go to trial, as being sent to Broadmoor Psychiatric Prison to be assessed. As a psychopathic paranoid schizophrenic, he wasn't deemed mentally fit to plead for 3 years. His confession was worth its weight in gold, but as 6 psychiatrists gave differing opinions on whether he actually knew the difference between reality or fantasy, fact or fiction, the problem was, in his mind, all of the details blurred into one, even in his own retelling. While confessing to killing Henrietta, Mackenzie said,
I've spoken to my brother, Danny, and he asked me if I did it alone. I said no.
He then named his accomplice, a fellow burglar, a friend and an old flatmate, who was later arrested but released without charge as there was no evidence against him. In his statement, Mackenzie said,
I intended to steal. I never meant her any harm.
But as she opened the door to him, so he claimed,
I pushed her back, put my hand over her face, and this time I had the knife in my hand.
and with his supposed accomplice,
We argued about what to do with her. It was him. He took the knife out of my hand and hit the old lady with it. We started looking about the flat. Then we both raped her.
although that evidence was all destroyed by fire. But was Mackenzie a psychopath who only cared about himself and was hoping to reduce his charge by blaming his friend? Or a fantasist who couldn't tell the truth from a dream and the facts about his heinous crimes were lost inside his mind? On the 11th of January 1990, the trial for both arson attacks, the 14-year-old's rape and the murders of Barbara Pinder and Henrietta Osborne began at the Old Bailey before Judge Kenneth Richardson QC, with Robin Gray but those weren't the only crimes he confessed to. Having told detectives about the 2 old ladies he had murdered, being born and bred in Scotland, struggling with psychopathic schizophrenia, being a sadist, an arsonist, a rapist, and a paedophile with a hatred of women, as he had with Barbara and Henrietta, before the detectives, once again, the blabbermouth began to speak. In a scattergun retelling, like his fractured memory was grasping at fragments of clues lost in the foggy midst of his mind, he confessed to a wealth of other unsolved murders, retelling them in full detail. He had murdered a 27-year-old man in Hertfordshire, a 79-year-old woman in Shropshire, an 11-year-old girl on the Scottish borders, a 5-year-old girl in Edinburgh, And with 2 stabbings of victims who, like 60-year-old Eileen McCarthy, the cleaner who was randomly stabbed in the face in an unprovoked attack in Pimlico, had survived. A senior detective stated,
He may, someday, give us the information we want to close the files on these dreadful events which have haunted so many people for so long.
Guilt can be a strange thing, as with 2 brutal unsolved murders. What began with a silent man sitting passively in a police interrogation room, guilty of rape and arson, but saying nothing. This led detectives to a self-confessed serial killer and a series of unsolved murders across the UK, totaling as many as 10 or even 12. Part 2 of 2 of The Blabbermouth continues next week. Right. Well, there we go. You can tell I'm getting old now. Finished recording that episode, struggled to get to the end, had to rush off and have a wee. It's happened twice now in a row. It's because I'm 50, isn't it? It's because I've turned 50. I'm old and decrepit, and everything is falling apart. Oh dear. Anyway, I hope you're all well. Welcome to Extra Mile, the unscripted, unedited bit. Put my earplugs away. Oh, sorry, dropping them everywhere. Unscripted, unedited bit. We have a little chat. We do some quiz questions, and then I try and fill you in on some stuff that may not have made it into the episode. Although I don't know how much there will be, because we got part 2 next week, and Blackbird outside having a good old tweet. Oh, that's going to be a nightmare to edit out. And yes, what else is going on? So. Haven't moved yet. As of time of recording, it is... What time is it? It's 10th of March as of time of recording. Have I moved yet? No. Am I meant to be moving on the 13th of March when the locks reopen? Yes. Last week they sent us... Well, they didn't even send us a message. It was on the website, so we had to go searching for it. So I've had to tell loads of people in front of me on the canal what's happened, because they didn't know, because we haven't been told this. They closed the locks at the start of January. They did no work for ages. They blamed it on bad weather. Then they did nothing for about 7 weeks. I go there every day, and they've literally done very little. And then we got a message last week going, do you know, we're running late. No shit. And they're like, but we'll give you a little window. So they're going to delay it by a week. I've got to wait till the 20th. Then we've got 3 days to get through the locks, and then they're going to shut them again for a week. So hopefully I can start my journey, which is good, because I'm getting a bit restless. I've been here since New Year's Eve, and it's now March, and I'm going a bit crazy at the moment. I can't wait to get on with my journey, because it has been good. I've enjoyed it. I've been hiding out in and around Hertfordshire, in and around a little place called Tring, which has been good, and I've been trying out some new ideas. I've been filming if you go on my Murder Mile Walks and True Crime Podcast Facebook group, sometimes on my Instagram, and some are on TikTok. I hate those social medias. They really are terrible. I post little videos of local cases, and they've done really well. Normally, like, they did really badly on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram, but weirdly on Facebook they did really well. Like, in the space of a week, I think I got like close to 250,000 views on these little videos. So that's been really good. And the people of Tring have been very nice about it and very welcoming. And even though Tring only has a population of, I think it's 13,000 people, it's been really weird. Like, I walk down the street, and almost every day I have people stopping me, go, "Oh, you do the little videos." So it's really interesting. So I think it's interesting because I've been finding tiny cases that locals don't know about, so which has been really good, and they've kind of embraced it and taken it on, and they've really enjoyed it. So I've got the last couple of my videos going out this week. I've got a little 1-minute 3-parter about a brutal murder case that happened in the I think it was 70s or 80s, which is going out next week. So, and an armed siege, I've got one of those, and I had one yesterday about a horrible story about a homeless man who basically rotted to death while he was still alive, which which is horrible. That blackbird won't shut up outside, but I've stopped recording, so it's not really a problem now. Anyway, so yeah, it's all going well here. I'm just looking forward to getting on with my little journey and carrying on with my life. Anyway, thank you to new Patreon subscriber. Thank you to Lynn Allen. So thank you to Lynn, that's very much appreciated. Thank you to everyone who continues to return as a Patreon subscriber. That's really useful as well, so thank you very much. Don't forget, if you are a subscriber, you get the location videos I put on there. All the crime scene photos go on there. Everything I can find I put on there. It's a lot of stuff that I never share on social media, so there we go. Let's dive in, let's do some quiz questions, and then we'll dive into the extra stuff, etc. Brain's not working. I've got a bit of a headache, I'll be honest. Not an Eva style headache. That's a different thing. Although I was at a PCAG's stag do at the weekend. Started at 3 p.m. PCAG. I mean, we did ply him full of a lot of booze, but he was starting to topple around 9 p.m. He was looking a bit shaky at 9:30, and according to my records, he left before 10 p.m. Oh, PCAG! But then again, we are all getting older, so yeah, hats off to him. We had good fun. We had a good time. So it was nice to see some old friends there as well. So let's do the quiz questions and let's crack on. Question number 1: Selsey in Sussex. It's a place whose name means what? Question number 2. Barbara was an aeronautical journalist and the former editor of what magazine? Question number 3. Why was the communal door to Prince of Wales mansions left open? Question number 4. What was Henrietta Osborne's birth name? Question number 5, where was Henrietta Osborne born? Where was she born? Question number 6, where was David Mackenzie born? Question number 7, where was he raised? And question number 8, how many years was he deemed unfit to stand trial? Don't forget, I haven't edited this episode yet, so I may ball some of these up. I've deliberately picked questions there which hopefully I won't trip over here, hence they're all where are they born questions. This was one of these series I've wanted to do for ages. I was going to do another two-parter on a relatively well-known case, but then I realised not only had someone I know done a really good version of it, but the BBC had done a really good version as well. So I jacked that in, and then I looked at my list of other cases, and I thought, oh yeah, Barbara Pinder and Henrietta Osborne, they're meant to be connected. And that's when I went down the rabbit hole of researching into those, and I just started piecing everything together, and I thought, wow, this is fascinating. This is a really interesting case. So I'm going to try and not tell you too much about it, because next week's case we dive into David Mackenzie, and we dive into the other murders as mentioned at the end that he confessed to as well. So, but it's fascinating. It really is fascinating. It really is. So I'm going to try not to ruin those. Oh, hang on. Bugger. I've got that's next week's one. Hang on. I'm going to have to scroll down. I was just about to start reading all of the info for next week's episode. So let's check I've done this right. Right, Barbara Pinder. Born Barbara Ann Wilson, 17th of July 1908. Don't worry, this isn't one of the quiz questions. We don't really know much about them. It's interesting. These cases did get a lot of coverage, I think, because of the violence that was inflicted against these women, but very little about their early lives were out there. So I've had to kind of go through censuses and electoral roll records and things like that just to piece everything together. But to be honest, there's not a huge amount. There really isn't, and what we do have doesn't really lead to a kind of a motive. I think that's the thing with this, is that he doesn't seem to be killing women who he knows. These seem to be chance encounters. These seem to be people who he comes across, as with Henrietta. It very much seems like her door may have been left open, and with Barbara, because obviously for reasons that we will get to in a bit, the communal door was left open as well. So that seems to be his thing. He doesn't seem to be targeting specific women. Well, he does. He's targeting small, frail, elderly women
potentially ones who have money, even though it doesn't seem to be a burglary that he's doing or a robbery. That seems to be secondary to everything he's doing. But even though he's a burglar, he seems to be focusing on places where he can get in easily. What else we got? I don't want to give away too much that to do with the quiz questions. As we know, her husband was an aeronautical engineer, and he was in and around the war. We don't really know much after that. It was said that they were married. He was 24, she was 21. They had one son called Simon. She was a professional pianist and, as mentioned, a main understudy for Ivor Novello's principal singers in her youth as part of the Ivor Novello Company. If you've seen the Alfred Hitchcock film The Lodger, that is Ivor Novello in there, but obviously we still have the Ivor Novello Awards today. And she was instrumental in the hit West End play Perchance to Dream at London's Hippodrome from 1945 to 1948. Apparently it was a play about, longing and loss in kind of during the war and things like that. And he gave her a signed version of the original manuscript of We'll Gather Lilacs as a thank you, which she kept hold of, and it's still a well-known song today. She regularly went to church, liked going shopping. She went out for walks. As you can see, even though she's in her 70s, she's small, but she's relatively fit. She keeps herself happy. Her husband died 20th of March 1980. He seemed to be living with his son in Clevedon and Avon, but we don't know why. We don't know why. We don't know whether he may have got sick and then had to go and live with his son. We're not too sure, or whether that was just the address that was given. But we're just not too sure. Or maybe him and his mother, Barbara, were living there in Avon with him as well. We don't know. We don't know exactly what flat it is. It is listed as 24A Prince of Wales Mansions, which is on the 3rd floor. But when I started looking, Prince of Wales Mansions is kind of, I think it's like 70 to 77 Prince of Wales Drive. So it could be that 24A is the flat, but it's not clear. So I deliberately haven't put that there. We know it was a one-bedroom flat. It was safe. It was communal. Many of the residents were elderly and well off. There probably wouldn't have been security there, but it was kind of a place that has good solid doors. There was a man who was seen that day, aged 20 to 30, one of them aged 45-ish, in blue overalls with a receding hairline, and a third, 35 to 40, 5'9", brown hair and wearing a red jumper. But they were later believed to be travelling salesmen. And in fact, one of them was selling paintings in a rolled-up bundle. This is the problem, is that we're going back to this era, and let's not forget, this is pre-CCTV, pre-most security on home, really, kind of like fire alarms and things like, not fire alarms, burglar alarms and things like that. So we don't know how he got in. We don't know whether he followed her in. I think that makes sense. The main door was open. He may have followed her up the stairs, and as she put the key in through the door, that's when he attacked. As her son said, she was still wearing her walking shoes at that point, which he said she always took off when she got in, and she put them beside the door. So it makes, so that kind of gives, that little detail gives us kind of a nice timeline. As you can see with all of the attacks on these women, it's not like he's attacking them to render them senseless so he can rob the house. Like, given the fact they're old and small, and he is big and powerfully built and stocky, as they say, he's able to strangle them with one hand while beating them. So he could easily render them unconscious and then tie them up and whatever, and do what he needs to do in order to rob the place, but he doesn't seem to do that. This seems to be an absolute hatred of these women, and there doesn't seem to be any connection between Mackenzie and these women. Police couldn't find anything at all that kind of linked them together. So it really, even though they say that stranger attacks are rare, it really does seem like a stranger attack, and it doesn't seem like robbery is the main thing, the main reason why he's doing this. Robbery seems to be secondary. he is unemployed at this point, so it kind of makes sense that he's going in there to steal things. But it really does seem to be an intolerable hatred of these women. Like, the violence that he shows against them is horrific. And with Barbara, like, using one of her own knitting needles and stabbing her in the neck with that. There's a lot of violence around the face, which seems interesting, which really does show a level of hatred. And just stabbing her with a stiletto knife 45 times, to the point where the pathologist said most of her vital organs were in shreds. Man, that is horrific. That is pure hatred, especially when you consider that fact that when you're stabbing, and the blood will go up the blade, and therefore your hand is likely to slip on the handle and the hilt. Therefore, at some point, you're probably going to have to either swap hands or wipe the blade in your hand and then start again, because otherwise the knife will keep slipping in. Well, the handle will keep slipping in your hand. So, yeah. What else we got? Well, people noticed that she was missing. She'd failed to pick up a newspaper at the local shop on the morning of Saturday, the 27th of October. Her son, who, as mentioned, who lived in Clevedon, always called her on a Sunday morning, got no reply. He got in the car, drove there, couldn't get an answer at the door, noticed the door was locked. Police broke down the door, and there they found the body. I think police did pretty much everything they could. Autopsy was conducted by Dr. Rufus Compton, Director of Forensic Medicine at St George's Hospital. He said cause of death was strangulation and multiple stab wounds. The weapon itself was a thin stiletto-style blade, roughly around 6 inches long. But that was never found. And we don't know whether it was the same knife that was used on Henrietta either. It was roughly around the same size, though. But that's not to say, oh yeah, it's the same blade. There's a lot of 6-inch blades out there. Do you know? It's like if I were to look in my kitchen drawer right now, there's 2 6-inch blades in there used for cutting up vegetables and meat. Doesn't make me a killer. Honestly, it doesn't make me a killer. What else we got? So with that one, they really struggled. That went unsolved for about 2 years. Then we got Henrietta Osborne. Obviously, we don't really know much about her, except she was known as Peggy. I've kind of searched. I think I know who she might be, but I can't prove who I think she is. Therefore, I haven't put those details into this episode, and I haven't gone down that track of saying this is who she was and this is where she was born. So, etc., etc. As you can see, very frail, partially blind, almost deaf. Mid to late 80s, living alone, had very few visitors except a social worker. Liked to sit in an armchair, relaxing, listening to her music, which was turned up loud because of her deafness, and she was pretty much housebound. So for this attacker, like she's the perfect victim. She's not as wealthy as Barbara, but she does have some wealth. As you can see, she's got roughly around £1,000 in the house, which is about £4,000 today. A couple of antiques, things like that. She dresses relatively well, so the kind of person that... I mean, we've seen it before. Like, some people are so desperate, they'll commit horrible robberies and attacks for the sake of 50 quid. So some people are like that. They're just... But yeah, the flat was... same again, a small one-bedroom flat. She had money and it was tastefully decorated. With Mackenzie, he said... to do with him and his accomplice, he said we'd gone out burgling houses together. But when they found her inside, Mackenzie said, I intended to steal, I never meant to do any harm. He said that when the old lady came to the door, he pushed her back. His hand immediately went over her face. At this time, I had a knife in my hand. He claimed that his accomplice and him argued about what to do with her, and as she was lying on the floor covered in blood, Mackenzie claimed that his accomplice, who was never named, took the knife out of my hand and hit the old lady with it, i.e. stabbed her, and then we started looking around her flat, and that's when they raped her together. Obviously, this can't be proven because the lower half of her body was deliberately burnt. As you can see, her spine was cracked. Her face was a mess of cuts and bruises. She was manually strangled with one hand, one large hand. So very similar to the other crime. But again, doesn't necessarily mean they're linked. Just because someone has a big hand doesn't mean it's unique. I think that's what we've come across before many times in Murder Mile, is that it's too easy for people to jump to conclusions, to go, oh, two men and they were both wearing blue jackets. Whew, must be the same killer. Blue jackets. Whew. How many? I'm wearing a blue jacket right now, and I have a 6-inch knife, 2 of them in my kitchen drawer, and I could probably be described as stocky, and I'm just under 6 foot. So, and I think Mackenzie is described as balding as well. So, yeah, I mean, we have a lot in common. We both have lived in London, so both have Scottish relatives. So, but it doesn't mean that we're both killers, honestly. So, yeah, I think it's key to not jump to too many conclusions and go, oh, it has to be the same person. Might be, might not be. So yeah, the room was ransacked, but even the police said it only seemed slightly ransacked, and they did wonder whether a fight had been put up, but it didn't seem like Henrietta had put up a fight, because it seemed more likely that she was in bed, and being deaf and mostly deaf and partially blind, she may not have woken up. It seemed like she hadn't woken up at all. They also thought that maybe they'd been spooked, if it was both accomplices, or if it was just Mackenzie by himself. If he'd been a spoot, and don't forget there was a loud bang that neighbours said they heard at 2 a.m. This could be true, but they may have remembered it from another night. Don't forget, people's witness testimony is all over the shop sometimes, so we just don't know. So she could have put up a fight, or he could have knocked things over as he fled out of the building. There was £1,000 roughly in the flat. In some reports it says around £2,000. This is roughly around £4,000 today. And as we know, that the 10-inch Japanese earthenware vase from the 1920s was stolen, but only worth around 50 quid. But then again, you know, it's not like burglars going in; they're experts in antiques, is it? So they just nick whatever they think is sellable. But in this case, he missed all of her money. I think being an elderly person, and like a lot of people, didn't really have faith in the banks, therefore felt it was better to hide her money in a mattress, in a vase, things like that. So that's where her money was. It wasn't tied up in banks. But he definitely seems to have tortured her. That's one of the sadistic, horrible things in there. Either it was a small knife, we don't know what type, or it was a chopstick, but this had been stuck between her eyeball and her eyelid, as the police say, to terrorise and cause her great pain. So she was alive at that moment. So absolutely horrific. So this would have been one of hers. Also, a ballpoint pen, one of hers, sticking out of her neck, which is the same as with Barbara, and she'd been stabbed at least 5 times in the face and neck. On top of that as well, also stabbed in the chest as well. After he'd raped her, then he anally raped her, then he stabbed her from behind, in the chest from behind, so she couldn't scream, and almost certainly to kill her, and then set fire to the bed. So yeah, this is a very, very disturbed person, very, very warped. She was discovered at 8 a.m. on Sunday. It says the 31st of July, but that's incorrect. By the caretaker, by a neighbour who saw smoke coming through the ventilation grill, and then called the caretaker of the building, who called the police. 50% of her body was destroyed by fire, that being the lower half. Autopsy said she'd been mutilated, stabbed and strangled. Death was caused by burns, manual strangulation and repeated stabbings. Her body was too badly burned to confirm conclusively whether she'd been sexually assaulted. But it kind of seems so likely, doesn't it? The serial attacker who seems to be out on the streets. This was weird. So when I started researching into Barbara and Henrietta, I started looking for other cases in and around there, and trying to find any threads that can connect things. And that's when I found that the police were kind of, when they mentioned in there about the 4 other attacks, I was like, 4 other attacks? What the hell is going on? And that obviously led to all the old ladies in the Lillington Gardens estate and
Pimlico, such as Eileen McCarthy, 60-year-old cleaner, attacked in the street, stabbed 3 times in the face. Again, stabbed in the face. It's a hatred of women, but also a hatred of their faces as well. So there seems to be a connection there, although, as I said before, I keep saying this, we can't just assume that things are connected because we want them to be connected. And they couldn't be connected at that point until 30th of June 1986, when Mackenzie was arrested for breaking into the flats of 2 elderly ladies on Page Street in Pimlico and setting fire to their beds while they were still in them. Twisted, horrible man. I think Duke Street, Duke's house on Vincent Road in Pimlico is still there today. It was a council-run tenement block run by Westminster Council as part of the Grosvenor Estate. It's a 6-storey building with a very distinctive kind of grey brick and white render checkerboard design, representing the interwar rebuilding scheme. And it's not too far from Big Ben, the House of Parliament, and Horseferry Road Magistrates Court, where he would be tried. Again, we know little about his life. It's a nightmare because he's Scottish and he's called David Mackenzie. He might as well be called John Smith. It just, when people give their children boring names, or not to say it's boring, but normally it's a family name, isn't it? It's like, well, your father's called David, so I'll call you David as well. And he was named after his granddad. It just makes it really difficult for people doing research. But as we can see, struggling since he was age 6 with a personality disorder, later diagnosed as a paranoid psychopathic schizophrenic. Struggled to hold down life, a history of arson, a history of rape, including the 14-year-old girl who he raped in his flat, and found guilty of 5 counts of unlawful sex with her. He initially denied raping her and then admitted to 2 offences of unlawful sex, which resulted in his hospital order. So at least the law seems to be working there. The law can see that he's setting fire to old ladies in their beds and he's raping young women, and quite rightly, instead of sending him to prison and going, there you go, 6 months in prison, that'll sort you out, they're going, right, hospital order, you're going to go to prison and you're not going to come out until you're safe. Unlike, I think it was with Peter Bryant and even the Camden Ripper as well, sent to a psychiatric unit and got out within a very short space of time. And there we have his confession as well. I'm not going to go too more into that because we're going to dive into his confession next week. We got his confession, we got all the other murders he's confessed to, and we'll explore more about Barbara and Henrietta's murders as well. But I think that is it. I don't want to give away too much. Yeah, I think that's it, folks. So let's scroll back to me questions. All the way up here. Right, here we go. While this bird is being bloody noisy. Right, question number 1. Selsey in Sussex. It's a place whose name means what? It means Holy Island. Question number 2. Barbara was an aeronautical journalist and the former editor of what magazine? It should be an easy one to get because she was an aeronautical journalist and the magazine was called Flight. Question number 3, why was the communal door of the Prince of Wales mansions left open? I slightly alluded to that one already. They got builders in because of a recent fire which led to a partial collapse of the roof. Question number 4, what was Henrietta Osborne's birth name? I think I alluded to that one as well. We don't know. We've no idea what her birth name is. I know she was married, and I think that's the problem, is that she was called Henrietta Osborne. Most people called her Peggy. On some documents, she's only known as Peggy. But obviously, Osborne is almost certainly her married name. And because there were lots of Henrietta Osbornes born on that same year, and we don't know where she comes from, it made it almost impossible to find her. So, unfortunately, we don't know. Question 5, where was Henrietta Osborne born? We don't know. We have no idea. So there are trick questions. You're welcome. Question number 6, where was David Mackenzie born? We know he was born in Inverness, just like not too far from the Beast of Banffshire. There we go. Question number 7, where was he raised?
Dundee, which we'll come back to next week. And question number 8, how many years was he deemed unfit to stand trial? 3. So we finish next week. Hope you enjoyed that episode, if indeed you can enjoy a horrible episode about a horrible man who did horrible things to good people. Have yourself a good one, folks. Stay safe and be good. Best wishes and lots of love. Thanks for supporting the show. Bye.
Want more true crime? This podcast and loads more are part of the Always True Crime Network. It's packed with box sets to binge and twisted tales you won't find anywhere else. Find your next podcast obsession at alwaystruecrime.com.